Good evening all, and welcome. For those of you who don't know, or are perhaps new here, my wife runs a channel all about the environment. It's a pretty hot topic, and it's important stuff. I know most people aren't interested or don't really want to listen, but it really is important. Anyway, she launched a new video over there, and of course, it would genuinely mean a lot to me if you guys would check it out. I've linked it in the description, or alternatively, wait until the end of the video and click the link that you'll see on screen. I hope you guys will at least consider it. Who knows, you might even enjoy it. Also, the Patreon thing, if you're still interested, again, I've extended the deadline because a lot of you have said that you wanted the deadline extended, so there it is. You can receive all these prizes if you sign up to the $15 tier, but there are other prizes for the other tiers as well, and more prizes for the higher ones. Anyway, thank you for your time, but without further ado, it's time to get comfortable. Attune your sixth sense, and let the darkness take control. This happened a few months ago, but it still freaks me out. One night, me, my parents, and my siblings were in the bathroom brushing our teeth, getting ready to go to bed, when our dog all of a sudden just laid by the stairs. Suddenly though, I guess she heard something move or something, because she got up all of a sudden and walked over to my little sister's room, and she just froze. Mind you, there was nothing in that room besides the furniture that she was already familiar with. The door was wide open, and it was pitch black in the room, but my dog freaked out and began barking like crazy, showing her teeth and everything. Her fur stood upright, and she was slowly backing away from the room, not once losing sight of whatever she was watching. My family and I just kind of turned on each other thinking, what? But my dad is a real skeptic when it comes to these things, so he calls back the dog, went into the room and turned the light on. Nothing, of course. Needless to say, my sister was pretty hesitant to sleep there, but my dad told her to quit the crap, so she did. Our dog, who normally always sleeps at her bedside, stayed safely at the door. So then we kind of forgot about the incident. It didn't happen again, and my dog seemed to have gotten over it as well. A few days passed, and my younger siblings were asleep while me and my parents were watching some TV downstairs. All of a sudden, my sister comes racing downstairs crying and is absolutely terrified because someone was knocking on her bed. Now, me and my mum were a little freaked out, especially when she remembered the incident with our dog. But we didn't want to make it worse, so we told her it was probably nothing, and she eventually went back to bed, only after my mum tucked her in. A couple of days passed again. This time we were all ready in bed. My sister was asleep, and I think my parents were too. But I could hear my brother moving around in his room and shutting down his computer, so I knew he was awake. I lay on my stomach, faced away from the door, just scrolling on my phone, when all of a sudden I feel someone push at the end of my bed, causing it to kind of shake. It was so real the way my bed moved, that at first I was 100% sure it was my brother trying to freak me out. So I just said, "Cut it out, Stephen," and I kept scrolling. I didn't even look behind me, and it happened again. I repeated myself, this time more frustrated. Then it happened a third time. This time I spun around, fully prepared to yell at Stephen, but there was nobody. I literally just froze. I grabbed my covers tighter, and my heart was racing in my chest. I was contemplating what to do. Do I call my brother? Do I just jump to the door and run? I was picturing this whole movie scenario where I was going to be dragged down the stairs, so I was very frightened to move. But then it got even freakier. As I'm laying there contemplating what to do, someone knocks on the bottom of my mattress. It happened 3 times, and it was strong enough to actually move it. I think I finally snapped at that moment. When I tell you I sprinted, I mean put me in the Olympics sprinted. I ran out of my room, yelled for my brother, and woke up everyone, and just freaked the hell out. My dad inspected the room for me like I was 6 again, and I eventually slept in my brother's room on the spare mattress. I still don't know what the hell could have done that, but I'm not hoping to find out. I have experienced ghosts pretty much my entire life. Let's start from the beginning. From the first day we moved in, my husband went to work, and I stayed home to unpack. We have a guest room right next to our room. Within an hour, my cat started growling at the room, and my dog was growling and barking. I grabbed a pair of scissors and threw the door open, expecting to see someone in there, but it was empty. My mum always said, when things like that happen, I need to say, in the name of Jesus Christ, you are not welcome here, and you need to leave. That was the first time I ever said that. Ghosts haven't been a big problem for me growing up, so I could ignore most of it. But we just moved in, so I didn't want that to happen at all. I'm guessing that made things worse. I have an intense fear of windows at night. I don't know why, but I always have. So I had to buy curtains for our front door, back door, and kitchen window and rooms. The first incident happened at night. I was checking Facebook and looked up for a moment. It looked like someone was standing outside my house. I went back to Twitter, deciding it was probably a tree. When I was ready to go to bed, I sat up and saw a black shadow at the foot of my bed that slowly disappeared. After that, it was normal creaks and footsteps and things vanishing. I need to mention that for a few months, our cat had refused to sleep in our room at night. She will always sleep in the guest room, as it is her own bedroom. A week ago, my friend came over and brought her dog. She had her dog on her lap, and almost instantly her dog looked at the corner of my living room and started growling. Since then, I have been super uncomfortable. That same night, I put my smartphone on the end of the table. My side of the bed is right next to the bedroom door, and I caught a glimpse of what looked like the bottom of a white dress passing by. I jumped and slept under the covers that night. I call my grandma weekly since my mum died in December. While I was on the phone with her talking about my mum, I saw what looked like a shadow figure pass by our guest bedroom, which used to be hers. The animals stayed well away that day. The weirdest one that happened to me a while ago. I'm a night owl, so I'm always up until morning. I was watching TV, just normal reruns, and I was laying down on the couch which sat below our window until we rearranged it. I sat up and instantly felt dread and panic and fear. I thought I was in danger. I jumped off the couch and turned around. I had sat up and was right in front of an open space in the curtains, where anyone could look inside the house. As I said, I have an irrational fear of windows at night. No one could explain why that scared me so much, because I had no idea until I turned around. That brings us to today's incident. In between has been small stuff, as I said before. What happened was when I fed my cat dinner, she jumped off the desk where she eats. She looked at the bedroom and jumped as if something was terrifying her. She kept watching the bedroom and carefully walked under our entertainment center, over to the bedroom, and I tried to blame our fan, but she's never been afraid of it before. I followed her with my camera, switching between my bedroom door and hers, and she still carefully walked into the room and is still under my bed. My dog is acting like things are normal, but she's been with me for 8 years, so perhaps she's just used to it. I am a 28-year-old American female. I have experienced many paranormal experiences in my life, starting at a very young age. I have grown to respect and trust my instincts because they have proven true time and time again. Usually my internal voice will alarm whenever there is odd energies or things that aren't natural. However, recently I had a completely different experience that has left me shaken. Back in June of 2018, I gave birth to my son. The pregnancy was pretty average. A rough first trimester, but nothing alarming. All of my well checks and ultrasounds went as expected, and the only concern was that he was going to be a large baby. I'm a small-framed female, so a large baby was concerning for birth. Anyway, my labor went well up until an hour after birth. To keep a long story somewhat short, my son and I both had severe complications. I ended up having a retained placenta and hemorrhaged severely on the delivery bed. It was a close call, but after a 2-hour D&C with no anesthetics that was performed in the room, and my husband still has nightmares about the amount of blood, I made it through. There was literally blood on the ceiling, floors, walls, and staff because the doctor was just pulling whatever she could out and throwing it on the ground in an attempt to remove all the broken pieces of placenta so that she could insert the balloon to stop the bleeding. Because of the amount of blood, the doctor actually slipped and fell on me with the utensils, causing an infection, which gave me severe convulsion episodes later. It was a nightmare. At the same time as this was happening, my son was aspirating in the crib next to me. I will cut to the chase with him and explain that after his aspirating several times, they found that my son had several birth defects that are very hard to detect during gestation. Everything he has is physical and not cognitive, and he faces everything with such strength. I couldn't be more proud of him. At the time though, all they knew was that he needed emergency surgery and were transporting him to the NICU. I was absolutely devastated. I just fought so hard for my life to find out that now my son was having to do the same. It is hard to explain to others how I felt in that moment. I will jump through details that aren't important to the story. I was able to convince my doctors to discharge me 22 hours after birth so that I could be with my son. The NICU has private rooms for each baby where the parents can stay in the room with them, and that is what I did for the entirety of his stay. At 2 days old, my son was waiting to be taken from the operating room for his first surgery. While staying with him, I ended up suffering from a spinal headache. For those of you fortunate enough to not have experienced this, let me tell you that it is awful. I couldn't do anything but lay flat on my back without being in severe, debilitating pain. I would never wish that on anyone. It ended up lasting for 3 weeks. The day I woke up with it gone was amazing. Here is where things became odd for me. During this time, I refused to leave my son. I was at the hospital with him all the time so that I could make sure I knew exactly what he needed. We knew it was going to be a very long road ahead of us, and I wanted to be as prepared as possible. I was not worried about my own health in any way. To be honest, going home wasn't helpful to me. I was so sick with the spinal headache and infection that any chance I could, I was laying down. Anyway, but at least at the hospital I was by my son. I went home a few times and it didn't last. I felt empty and anxious and I just couldn't do it. One day in particular, after the headache was less aggressive, I was feeling a bit more energetic and decided to return home for a few hours. I spent time with my animals and my husband, cleaned up the house, showered in my own shower and just rested. On the way back to the hospital, my husband and I stopped by the gas station. He went in to pay, and I sat in the car. I was trying to send a text message when I started to become very aggravated, as I was not hitting any of the buttons correctly. I was typing gibberish, so in frustration I threw my phone. I went to stand up out the car to go grab a candy bar when everything went black. My knees buckled, and I fell on the concrete sobbing. My vision was gone. I felt my husband grab me and ask what was happening, with panic in his voice. I could barely speak in between sobs, but I somehow managed to choke out, "I can't see." Luckily, there was an emergency room not 3 minutes down the road from where we were at, so he rushed me there. I felt him put me in a wheelchair, and a nurse came to talk to me. I tried to speak with him, and then I realized it was worse. I couldn't feel my tongue. I was trying to speak, but sounded like my face was just injected with Novocaine. At the time, it wasn't amusing, but looking back now, it sounds hysterical. Anyway, after a while everything ceased, and I was feeling much better. The staff were concerned that it was either a severe panic attack, as I do have a history of severe anxiety and depression, or it could be a stroke. The doctor ordered a CAT scan. In the meantime, they decided to give me fluids and a new medication through the IV. Unfortunately, that was not a good decision. Just my luck. I apparently have an allergy to this medication, and I went into full dystonia. I lost it. I thought the walls were caving in. I felt caged. I had panic attacks because I heard that the radiology department was running behind, and I was not willing to be away from my son any longer. I ripped out my IV, and I was leaving. Despite my husband and the staff urging me to stay, I wasn't having it. The CT could wait. Clearly, with all I had been through, and already having severe anxiety, it was obvious that I threw myself into the worst panic attack I ever had. Boy, was I wrong. Over the course of the next 2 weeks, I had 3 more episodes. None of them were as severe, but I still had the numbness in my face, arms, and legs, to the point I dropped things without knowing it, or would fall. Luckily, my vision only blurred, but never went fully away. I know it sounds ridiculous now, but at the time I justified it. I thought for sure my body was overloaded and panicking. For anyone who has ever experienced true panic attack, they underestimate that the symptoms mimic something more severe. I refused to handle anything in regards to me until my son was home. One night I was having a really hard time. I was in so much pain, but not like before. The pain was different. It was constant and throbbing, worse than any migraine or headache I have ever experienced. Unlike before, laying down made no difference and brought no relief. It wasn't a horrible pressure at the back of my skull/top of my neck anymore. It was my entire head. I was, for the first time in my life, considering banging my head against a wall. I felt a very deep panic at that point, and the pain would never stop. I was in agony, but was hiding it from everyone because I didn't want to leave my son. No one else could get him to eat what he needed to in order to gain weight and come home. They tried very hard, but he was adamant that he wanted his mum. And it was very hard on all of us, and made me feel an extreme guilt if I left. Despite me trying to hide my pain, my husband could tell something was off. He convinced me for the first time since my son was born to come for the night. I won't lie, it felt nice to lay in my own bed. I thought for sure being with my husband that I would feel comfortable enough to sleep. Instead, I had one of the worst nights of my life, and learned to never doubt your instincts. I tried so hard to sleep, I really did, but every time I closed my eyes, that voice inside would scream for me to wake up. I would jolt awake sweating, my heart was racing, and I felt tears coming. I would calm myself down and lay back down, but it would just repeat. I had no control over my mind. It just kept repeating, "Do not sleep, or you will perish. You will not wake up. You will never see your children again. You need to get up." I was fully convinced it was the end. By 3 a.m. I still couldn't break this cycle. I messaged my mum and apologized for waking her, but explained what happened. She was very comforting and told me that I was panicking because this was my first night away from the baby and that my anxiety was getting to me. I wanted to believe her, but I never have felt this sense of impending doom feeding my anxiety. I thanked her and let her be. I finally resorted to waking up my husband. I didn't want to because he really needed rest, and he was finally sleeping somewhat sound since I was home. He has always struggled to sleep without me, and I had been gone for weeks. I needed him though. I was to the point of sobbing and shaking. I was terrified, and I told him what had been happening, and he said the same thing my mum did. I needed to calm down and relax. I don't blame either of them in the slightest bit. It was the most reasonable explanation, and I understood that, but I could feel something was wrong. Something did not want me sleeping. I eventually drifted off for about 2 hours around dawn, and was relieved when I woke up. As the day went on, I convinced myself that they were right, that I had just worked myself up. And that evening the baby came home. I was so excited that my family was together again. My mum stopped over to watch the kids so that my husband and I could run to the store for some essentials. While leaving, I had my 4th episode of impending doom, and the feeling hit immediately. I was not ignoring it twice, and had my husband take me to the hospital. I felt ridiculous explaining everything to the staff. I was in the same emergency room I went to before, and other than the doctor, all the staff were the same ones I had prior. I apologized profusely for leaving before. They were all very kind and understanding, and I will forever be thankful for how supportive they were instead of scolding me and making me feel worse. A huge part of me felt dumb for going in and wasting their time over panic attacks, but I couldn't shake the feeling what I had was getting worse. I felt such immense panic. It's hard to put into words. It was deep in my stomach, heavy and sickening. I finally had a CAT scan done, and the doctor came back with the results. I will never forget the look on his face. He looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Darling, I'm so glad you came in. You really should have listened to your husband. You are very, very lucky. You aren't crazy. You are experiencing a CVST. You have a blood clot in your brain, sweetie. It's causing mini strokes, and I need to transfer you to the main campus immediately to be admitted to the stroke unit. This is very serious." I was in complete shock. I was completely convinced that it was not possible for me, a perfectly healthy 27-year-old female at the time, to have strokes. I know that it can be common after birth, but I had no prior symptoms or past history of such a thing. I will always wonder what was telling me so adamantly to get help. Was it me, my grandma, a spirit guide, or something else? Whoever it was straight to the point and very blunt. They made sure I knew the end was near. So to all of you, my advice is to never wait with your health, no matter the circumstances, and never ignore that gut feeling. Trust it, because I can guarantee you, it will be right. I'm 26 and have lived in 3 different places and feel as though either something is following me or for some reason things are attracted to me. As a child, I would have dreams where people would visit me, and then the next day they would pass away. It started with small stuff like that, every now and then. Eventually I went away to college, and little things would happen in the apartment. Stuff falling over right in front of me, and my roommate. The attic being open when we get home, and things going missing. Those things could be explained rationally, I'm sure. But then one night as my roommate went to work, she put her dog in his crate and I went and took a bath to get ready for bed. A few minutes later, I hear a woman say, "Annie, do you want to come out of your cage?" I call out to my roommate thinking she just got back, and all I heard was a brief silence, followed by furious barks and growls. I think someone's in my apartment. I open the door and Benny is out of his crate and run behind me in the bathroom. Meanwhile, here I am in my towel, looking around the locked apartment. Activity slowed a bit, but my roommate would experience scary things when I wasn't there, and she would always think she heard me talking to her from my room, but would always check and I wouldn't be there. I move out of there with my now husband to a new apartment, new state, and then the same stuff starts happening there, to the point of my dog freaking out about this one corner of the room daily. I started having night terrors, the same one over and over, about some black mist flying into our bedrooms to my side of the bed and a figure with a terrifying face moving in towards me. I would wake up screaming. Finally, here we are at a home now, where we have been for about a year. Again, the little things start happening. My husband works rotating shifts, and so to make me feel slightly safer, we got an alarm system and another dog. One night, I had my dogs on the bed, and I went to the kitchen to get some water. Halfway there, the door to my bedroom slams shut with such force that it makes the glasses in the kitchen cabinets clink. I walk back to the door, hoping my dogs were playing, and shut it, to find they are both cowering together on the bed, and my German Shepherd's fur is up while she is staring at the door. Another experience more recent was I was home alone. It was around 11 p.m, and I was getting ready for bed and turn on the alarm. I hear the door open at the front of the house, and I was thinking my husband was home. The dogs are going nuts and are jumping at the door. I call out for my husband with no answer. I check the alarm on my phone and it's still armed. Then I hear the door slam, very hard from the inside. So at that point I'm freaked. Then I hear men's voices right outside the window behind the bed. The dogs again go nuts and begin jumping at the window. I run to our back door. The dogs run out the back, barking ferociously. No one is there, and I call my neighbors to 1. Make sure there is no party, and 2. To ask them to help me look around. Nothing. No one. My neighbor even checked his security cameras on his front lawn, which has our place in the side view. No one came to the door. My dogs have been reacting to these things that I'm experiencing, and just getting anxious and whatnot about these random things. And now I have the same night terrors that I mentioned before. What do you guys think? I like to think I have a sixth sense. I don't really like talking about it because people think that I'm full of rubbish. It's more a feeling I get when they're around. It's up to them if they'd like to let me see them. It's more a feeling I get when they're around and I get goosebumps. It's my indication that a spirit is among us. I don't really go looking for it, if that makes sense. And it's not like I'll be walking down the street and get goosebumps, and I'm like, oh my god, they're a ghost. No, it's nothing like that. Anyway, one afternoon I was eating dinner with my boyfriend's family. Afterwards, we went to his aunt's house. For whatever reason, they were all in his cousin's room, a 15-year-old female. My boyfriend's sister and her boyfriend walk in, and I follow behind them. The door when you walked into the room was on the left side. As I walked in, I felt something push to the left of my lower back. I turned around assuming it was the doorknob hitting me as the door bounced back off the wall after I pushed it open. It wasn't. Somebody pushed me. Trying not to freak anyone out, I don't say anything, and I immediately got the goosebumps. Michael, my boyfriend's sister's boyfriend, told me, "Did he just push you?" And I said, "Yeah." while everyone in the room was looking at us like we're crazy. And I replied, "Wait, you can see him?" "Yeah," he replied. "I can't see him, I can only feel him." And he could see him, not feel. Weird, I know. Turns out we'd gone to her aunt's house because this old man had been haunting my boyfriend's cousin. She would wake up and see him standing in the doorway where he pushed me, standing in her closet and at the end of her bed. She would see him walking through the walls, and it was to the point where she couldn't sleep. And it was only when she slept alone in her room. I'm still not really sure why or what he wanted, or why he'd stand over her and just haunt her. I prayed the rosary in her name that night, and she has yet to be bothered by old man Greg again. I'm a high school teacher in downtown Pittsburgh. Our school is located in a historical building. Many of the buildings down there are original, with cosmetic updates. I am also a psychic medium. To be specific, I'm clairvoyant, meaning I can see the deceased and other spooky things that aren't always human. Teenagers are emotional, and they bring a lot of baggage with them. This includes baggage of the dead type. I've seen doppelgangers, a man hanging in an unlit room, people attached to the backs of students as they sit in class. But the story I want to tell is something I believe original to the building or location, and not the students. I should add, our school has black marble in many spaces of the school. Our bathrooms are floor-to-ceiling quartz and marble walls. So are our main floors, and each elevator lobby. If you are someone into crystals and natural minerals, this may interest you in connection with the activity. There are 3 spirits that have been bothering me in the past few months. The first one I call Dirty Feet. When in the bathroom or sometimes in my classroom, I can see the knee down of 2 dirty legs, dirt and moss, and human waste on them. This spirit smells musty and likes to scare you. The second spirit is in our student's stairwell. It's this solid black figure, like coal. He's a man with a very wide grin and red eyes. He seems to breathe like a smoker, heavy and with steam coming off of him. This is not so surprising, as there are many fights and turmoil happening in the stairwells on the daily. Other teachers have commented on how much they dread stairwell duty, not because of the kids, but because of the feeling of dread and anxiousness they get. Spirit 3 is old. I do not get scared much anymore, however this guy made me physically run out of room. There is this feeling of heaviness and being watched in our basement classrooms. In this room, I also have my printing press kept. I am in the basement a lot to manage the press, typically alone. Last week I unlocked the door to the room. I saw the deadbolt unlatch, but the door wouldn't open. I first figured something was in front of the door. The rooms tend to be messy. Maybe someone left something there. I push on it with my body weight, and eventually I was able to push it open slowly. When inside, I looked around the door, but there was nothing there to make it stick. Once open, it swung freely back and forth. I then remembered that this is the only entrance and exit, so there's no way something was put in front of it. I went to work, but felt very uneasy the entire time. I was not picking up on anything spooky, no ghosts in sight, just that feeling, the tingle between my shoulder blades. I kept looking over my shoulder, but no one was there. I started to lock up, turned the lights off, and did something every dumb white girl does in a horror movie. I turned around, and I kid you not, in the back of the room by the printing press was a tall man in a hat with a yellow-toothed grin, waving at me. I have never left a room so fast. I almost forgot to lock the deadbolt. Now I have a few more theories about this waving man. I do not think he is the infamous Hat Man. I have seen the Hat Man and he is different. He's dreadful but not mockingly evil, and I could see this waving man's face. I could never see that Hat Man's face. He didn't have an earthly face. Now for the strange part. Horror lovers will know the disaster that is Poltergeist 2 with the creepy singing reverend. Well, I, a woman who sees dead people all the time, is deathly afraid of that character. And the waving man looked just like, you know who, the reverend. I believe whatever is down there is not human, not good, and also not from a movie, but projected itself to be something I have a strong fear of to scare me. It worked. I'm terrified. I couldn't even tell my fiancé about the encounter without getting choked up, which is very atypical of me. I have to go back down to that room to work, and yesterday I heard mean laughing when down there. No matter. I have a job to do and cannot avoid the area, try as I might. I'm also not taking medication. We also get our chemical levels checked at the time because we're a school, so it's not the air, nor the CO2. This is a true story that happened to me. To date, I have a rather powerful sixth sense. I can see, touch, and even smell supernatural things. If I feel a supernatural event, I get a scent that gives me an impression of the event. I can see spirits and ghosts quite clearly, and even touch them if I concentrate. This all comes from birth, which was also my end. You may be wondering how it is if I'm writing this. Let me go back. I was born in 1987. The day I was born there was a complication. The umbilical cord was wrapped around me, and I was born deceased. At least the doctors and nurses said so. They even filled out the certificate that I found many years later. I was pronounced dead, and had been dead for several minutes when I suddenly started wailing. The doctors and nurses rushed over to see the miracle that had occurred. It is my belief that due to this happening at such a young age, I may have managed to acclimate to the other side, and my coming back made such that my abilities are retained. Ever since then, I've been able to see spirits and even play with them. However, around 80% of them were good-natured, 15% were ambient about me, and the last 5 scared me. When I was 10, I came back from a school trip when we were camped out. I was passed out on the sofa, and it was late night/early morning, and I needed to go to the toilet by the window. On the 6th floor was a tall dark figure in all dark robes, and he pointed at me as he glided through the window. Its face was featureless and then stopped as if regarding me. It then waved me goodbye and vanished. To this day I still remember the cold feeling in my body. My body wanted to lock itself up, like sleep paralysis, but I was able to fight it off, albeit partially. The sheer cold sensation, the cold sweat forming in my back, the hairs on the back of my head standing up. That entity that visited me was dangerous. If you need a better picture, imagine a Dementor but faceless, kind of like Slender Man. To this day I continue to read any book I can find on spiritual protection, that I feel are not bogus. It's around 4:30 AM here, and all the dogs in my neighborhood are freaking out. I get up to go let my dogs inside the house, figuring that'll calm things down a bit. I open the back porch door and look to my right where there is a fence line to another house. I look over there because it looked like there were some clothes hanging off the fence, and our neighbors have never done that, so I thought it was strange. Then I saw them. 2 men in black suits with no heads. I look at them for a good minute and make sure my eyes aren't playing tricks on me. I don't move, but they just stand there. I could tell that one looked heavier than the other, but that's it. I backed into the house, locked the back door and turned the light off. I go back into my room and tell my husband, who is now awake because of all the dog barking. I tell him I'm going to wait until it's light outside to get the dogs, because I just saw something I can't explain. I told him what I saw, and I said I feel like I sound crazy, but I saw this, and I'm not joking. He seemed like he believed me, but honestly, I don't know. That's probably why the dogs were barking. They must have this sixth sense. I stayed at a friend's house about 3.5 months ago, and this is when it first started. We ate dinner and watched the Golden Girls before crashing out. I told her I was ready for bed and headed to the guest bedroom. She asked if I would leave the door open, because her cat likes to go in there, and if I don't, he'll scratch at the door. So I left the door open. I didn't mind though, because the living room light was on, and it comforted me, since I'd never slept there before. So I'm sleeping and get woken up by the cat jumping on the bed across my back. He doesn't actually land on me. I'm laying face down and don't think anything of it. But I felt something else move across my back, very similar to how the cat felt jumping over me, but it was going in the same direction of the cat. I hear the cat meow and hiss, and then I hear it, in a little girl's voice. I want to get up there too. I tried to jump up, but I couldn't move. I was in complete panic, and couldn't move. Something pushed across my back again, and then the cat hisses and jumps after whatever was there. I have never been so scared in my life. I felt paralyzed, and not by fear, but by a pressure holding me down. I am not a religious person, but I started praying and getting a little emotional. I finally fell back asleep, as I had to be up around 6 a.m. to go to work the next day, and my alarm went off as planned. My friend, who was in the other room, yells and asks if I'm awake. I get up and go into her room and tell her good morning. She asked how I slept, and I told her not so great. She replies, "Me either. I kept having dreams about a demonic little girl in my room." This completely freaked me out. I told her what happened, and she was freaked. She grew up in that house and said she would never have anything like that happen. While I was getting ready for work, the cat that saved me would not leave my side. He literally laid on my feet while I did my makeup. I am not a fan of cats, but trust me, I was very welcomed that he didn't leave me. I have now had 2 more episodes when I hear her voice, and I wake up in a panic. I'm not sure if the last 2 are just nightmares, but it's scaring me and making me difficult to want to go to sleep, because I feel like she's following me. My husband and I have a 70-pound pit bull mix who looks mean but is a total sweetheart. She is never aggressive and doesn't bark without reason. Her name is Candy. We take Candy everywhere. She is spoiled rotten and loves meeting new people and getting rubs. We stopped by 7-Eleven in our less than super neighborhood at about 9 p.m. one night to grab some beers and snacks. My husband went in and I waited with Candy. She was restless, so we got out the car and I let her sniff about and say hi to her favorite store clerk who was out smoking. A woman came out. Without being judgmental, she looked strung out by both narcotics and general life. Skin and bones, ratty hair, and needle marks freckling her arms. I nodded politely, and she said hi as she got into the passenger seat of the car parked next to our SUV. I'm intrigued, but it's not shocking for this neighborhood, so I forget about it. My hubby comes out of the store, and we all hop into the car. He is telling me about a Redbox special and getting Candy settled in the back seat. I look over at the car the woman got into, a white Nissan. There's a large man in the driver's seat, and I notice him, and then Candy goes ballistic. She's barking and growling, and throws a total fit in the direction of the Nissan. I'm shocked at her behavior and look at the car again, when I see the oddest thing. The man doesn't look scared or mad or even annoyed. He puts his head down and covered it with his hands. Hubby and I both saw it and found it strange. Like I said, Candy is an intimidating looking pup. An angry or fearful response wouldn't have been shocking, but hiding his face from us? The woman is hidden by the support beam, so I can't see her reaction. It still sounds silly. My husband and I are really sketched out, and Candy doesn't react like that ever, especially to people minding their own business in their car. The guy must have had some insanely bad energy for her to lose it. I think dogs are attuned to that kind of thing. So we pull out, paranoid, and hubby takes a few turns even though we live on the same street as the 7-Eleven. We get home, set up a movie, and enjoy our beer and Cheetos. The weird incident slipping from our minds, and 30 minutes into our movie, Candy absolutely loses it, scratching at the front door, growling and barking with her hackles raised. We jump up, instantly on edge, and I go to peep through the living room blinds that face the street. The Nissan is creeping down the street at barely 10 miles an hour. We don't have a garage or carport, and our car is on our front yard. The Nissan stops, the driver obviously recognizing our car. I grab my shotgun. Luckily, the lights in front of the house were already off, so we weren't visible, and we crouch below the windows. And my husband calls his uncle, as police have a habit of not responding in these lower income areas. But this time, the Nissan is in the driveway. My hubby is looking through the peephole. The woman gets out. She looks cheerful and goes to the front door and knocks. "Hey, you guys want to party?" We don't respond, but we let Candy keep at it. She's barking and growling, sounding scary, like a damned hellhound. "Come on, we don't bite." My husband tells them to get lost, and I cock the shotgun right by the door. The woman starts laughing hysterically. I'm looking through the window, and the man gets out of the car with a handgun by his side. It's a busy road, but no one notices, and he shouts, "Open up." My husband replies, "Leave while you still can. We have a shotgun and a very angry dog." He laughs. "I'll shoot that mutt in the face." We're panicking. At this point, we have called the cops, and my husband's uncle is on his way. We stand our ground, and they start circling the house, Candy following them at every window. Finally, the uncle arrives. He's a big guy, ex-cop, MMA fighter, and armed to the teeth. My hubby takes the shotgun and heads out. He and his uncle head around the back of the house where the two are banging on the windows. I come out, but hang back with Candy on her leash. The last thing I want is her getting hurt, but I know she makes a huge point. Our neighbors joined us in his PJs with a rifle, having heard the crazy shouting. The girl starts crying, saying that they were just playing and that it isn't a big deal. The guy puts his hands up and says he isn't looking for a fight. The two got in the Nissan and drove off. It was only then that I noticed they had no plates on their car. The police arrived minutes later and took statements. We didn't expect much to come from it. My friends can't imagine that we are still in the house, But ironically, we are having a hard time finding a new place that will take pit bulls. There is not a chance that we'd abandon our girl, especially after the show of bravery and so many others, as she bit someone who broke a window and tried to break in a few months ago. So we just keep looking. I strangely don't feel too uneasy. I think our neighbor and family made a clear point, but I do wonder what those two were doing and what they think they saw in us. Stay safe, guys, and trust your pets. They know. Hey guys, it's Mort here, and thank you so much for listening. I do hope that you enjoyed tonight's video. Having sixth sense seems pretty cool. I once had a colleague at my old job. I can't remember where she was from. Like Malaysia or around there, I think. And she says that if you go to a shaman, he can open your sixth eye, so that you could basically have third eye, so that you'd have the sixth sense and be able to see or, have another appreciation for, spooky things. And I said, oh, I'd love to do that. And she said, no, you wouldn't. It's terrifying. You don't want to do that. Like she knew. I don't know if she did. Who knows? But yeah, it's creepy stuff. And I would, I don't know. Part of me says I'll brave it because I'm so desperate to see something paranormal. But what if I don't like what I see? And moreover, what if it just doesn't work and I'm disappointed? Who knows? I think it's really interesting. If anyone knows anything about it, tell me. Might have to do a pilgrimage. But yeah, hope everyone's good. As I said at the start, it would mean a lot to me if you would check out my wife's channel. It's on screen in a sec and in the description. And a huge thank you to all my lovely patrons who help keep the channel running. It really means a lot. And the info, if you want to find out more, is in the description. But anyway, without further ado, I'm going to sign off. The link to my wife's channel is now on screen. I hope to see you over there, and I'll see you in the next one.